strong principles, humility, and a deep sense of responsibility towards others. Sharon Engelbrecht is a passionate community leader and humanitarian whose life's work has been dedicated to uplifting disadvantaged children in the Strand community. As the founder of Smiling Child NPC, she has become a beacon of hope for vulnerable youth, working tirelessly to create opportunities that empower children to reach their full potential regardless of their circumstances. Inspired by her own experiences as a foster parent and driven by a heart for service, Sharon recognized the urgent need for educational support and intervention within underdeserved communities. With more than 3 decades of dedicated community involvement, she has devoted her time, energy, and compassion to improving the lives of children and families in need. Through Smiling Child NPC, Sharon continues to make a meaningful impact by advocating for education, care, and support for vulnerable children. Her unwavering commitment, compassionate spirit, and determination to bring positive change have earned her a deep respect within the community and beyond. And I think we see that all the time when at the Alnoc. Then finally, last but not least, Brendan Aloy is a committed father of 2 teenage sons. Brendan is a trained social service practitioner that holds a certificate in child and youth care work, social auxiliary work, and higher certificate in community development. Brendan is working on a youth development program in Cape Town that identify and nurture youth potential with a holistic intervention and support program that ensures successful futures for young people from marginalized groups in South Africa. Brendan is currently the project leader for the Cape Winelands Head, Heart and Soul Rites of Passage program for young men. The intent of the program is for young men to be introduced to the power of ritual in a non-threatening way. Within the awesome, imposing setting of the Franshoek Mountains and supported by the power of a circle of initiated men, each man will have opportunity in a modern rite of passage to engage with issues that challenge the head, heart, and soul of modern masculinity. The work with men and boys is pivotal to facilitate men's development, to tackle the root causes of crime and violence, domestic violence, and gender-based violence, including addressing harmful gender norms. So those are the panelists that we have for today. And so I think we're going to start with posing a question to all the panelists and providing their perspective from in their various capacities. And the question is that you all work obviously in different sectors and engage with communities in different ways. From your perspective, what are the biggest drivers of youth violence in our communities today? And maybe we start from our right with Dr. Johnson.
morning, everybody. My name is Jackie, and they did a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much. Because they told me 4 sentences. So what I did was I gave them 4 short sentences. So thank you. That was really beautiful. Yeah, understanding the route or the drivers. And you know what? I wrote down some issues, but I looked at my own family. And I looked at coming from a family with a mom and a dad, and we were 4 siblings. And I had 2 brothers. And the one was involved with drugs, and the other one as well. They have both passed on. But I want to agree with what the speaker was saying. Structure. I want to come to the family structure, the root causes, where there are dysfunctional issues. My brother was a very violent person, but he wasn't like that. He was born like that. But he grew up in a home where he witnessed violence. My dad was an extremely violent man, but he used to abuse alcohol and drugs. So now my brother learned that pattern in the family structure. So he did the same thing. He was extremely violent because he saw that my dad had not a healthy way of dealing with anger or dealing with the issues that he needed to deal with. His way would be drink, do his drugs, and then beat up on my mom or beat up on the family. So that is what he learned, making him a very angry man. Also, coming to the point where that is what my father made my brothers believe, that this is what it is to be masculine. That is a man, you are in control, you are here, jy druk alles af, né? But what I say goes. So my brothers saw that as well. So this is what a man is. Then I had an older brother, who I still have today. He was quiet and he was withdrawn and he went to varsity. So he didn't do the norm of sitting on the corner, smoking drugs, abusing alcohol. So now, according to my dad, Jason Murphy, you're Murphy now. So now, Gary's quiet. He doesn't know how to deal with his angers. So again, I come back to the family structure. That structure was dysfunctional. It wasn't in place. But then I also go back to how did my dad grow up? So yeah, so that is one of the things. Socioeconomic factors are also a reason why there is so much, that's the root of violence. Then also, like I said, the history of violence in the family, alcohol and drug I spoke into, poor behavioral patterns, and then emotional distress. You know, my brother didn't know how to deal with his anger. He didn't know how to protect my mom. He didn't know. So eventually, that followed suit with him. So those are some of the issues that I just wanted to mention. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, everybody. So I would say my first experience working with young people dated so many years back, but here in South Africa, it's about 18 years working with young people beginning from Delft. So, I mean, as a 15-year-old boy, I saw my father died of heart attack in my hand, and it brought a lot of pain and also confusion because I was only 15. That was like the prime of trying to be a man. So, bringing it back to the South African question, seeing a lot of young people, it is often, like possible to say that violence is associated with drugs, with drug use. But you will agree with me, I know quite a number of young people that are addicted to drugs, but they are not violent. And also see, like if you look at here in Broadland Park, just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, a young man about 14 stabbed his friend, also about 14, and the boy died. Some of us who live in Broadland can attest to that. Another boy, Michael should also be about 14, 15, was also stabbed. Thank God, he didn't die. He was 2 weeks uh, in the hospital, but he didn't die. But what I want to say about the cause of violence that I have personally experienced, which I wrote in my book on Break That Cycle, is anger. you know. And when young people, because I've not really worked with a lot of, older people, but with young people, teenagers, because of the masculinity, because of the adrenaline, because of, you know, this thing that I'm becoming a man, the wrong guidance on how to channel that strength, that, exposure to being a man, to the right thing, that is kind of missing. So we do not really have, like mentorship. Like, I know my son is now 17, going on 17, and as a father, what my father couldn't do for me, I'm able to see my son, because you could see the adrenaline, the energy to just do something. And if they're not, if we're not able to properly channel that energy into something positive, they start looking for where they can channel that energy to, just to feel important. So when that link is missing, then you have young people that channel the energy, the anger, to be important into just doing something. And we can see in many of our prisons, I mean, the police is here, they can see a number of young people from the age of 13, 14 that are now in prison. They don't belong to the prison, but it's just that there's something missing about how we can help these young people to manage the anger, the frustration that the community bring on them. And also, I've seen that many of our people think that the government is there to be the provider. The government is not the provider. Government makes provision. Government creates opportunities for communities to thrive. But communities need to be able to learn on how to be able to, make use of the opportunities that are there. Because if we keep waiting for government to do this, to do that, to do this, it's not going to happen. We need to be able to create, this kind of awareness to our young people. What are the opportunities that are available, and how can you make use of the opportunities that are already there? So that is what I have personally experienced. Thank you.
Excuse me, standing up. Thank you for inviting me. This is a question that even I listen to all of you and it's phenomenal, yet we still don't have an answer. And I don't think we're going to get an answer. But I work in Ward 83, Ward 85, and in Ward 100 of Rostov. And I think the big thing that I see there, listening to the guest speaker, was there's apathy. There's too much apathy. The parents have lost hope in getting their children educated. So when I ride around in the day, my colleague is Annette. She's running the educational part of Smiling Child, giving me time to be in the community. There's too many people that sit on the street pavements. Why? They have no hope and they have no vision. That's no one's fault. I cannot blame it on the residing government. I cannot blame it on any of you. It is something that is happening within the communities. So the more actively involved we get, and that's what Smiling Child does, is to show children there is hope and they do have a future. The big challenge that we have, or that I'm experiencing, and I'm sorry, I want to fetch something. I want to show you something. You see this little thing? You know what this is? This is pepper spray. Why do I carry pepper spray? Because I've come personally up against gang members that came to attack me. Let me tell you why. Because Smiling Child is a changing agent. We are changing our children. The Lord is transforming their brains. We got 24 kids into school last year. Next year, we're going to get 25 into school. All I want to tell you, there is hope. The question, what is the drive of violence among youth? Again, I want to say, they don't see a future. for themselves. Look how they sit on the pavement. I do not go into the community without stopping and talking to these youngsters and to encourage them that there is a future.
Thank you. Mijn naam is Brendan. Goedemorgen allemaal. Good morning. One of the biggest things, and I don't want to talk about stats, but Stats South Africa says that 60% of children in this country grow up without a father, without a positive. It's difficult. It's difficult for a young boy growing up without a father. There's a gap in his life. There's emotional gap. He's traumatized. He's confused. He don't have a sense of belonging because manhood, my identity as a man is closely connected with me as a father, with my father, providing me with that sense of identity and who I am in this world and guiding me. And 60% of children grow up without a father in this country. When we go to BIPOC, I call it BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, it goes up to 70%. So it's difficult for that young man or for that young woman growing up in that circumstances to get hope, to be inspired. And so once I was fortunate. I'm 42 years old. I've never seen my father. I've never met him. I've never spoke. I've never heard his voice. And I mean, someone say there's a hole in your soul, and that hole is in the shape of a father. And many young men like me grow up in that circumstances. Unfortunately, they end up in Portsmouth. The stats are clear. They end up in Portsmouth or they end up in the morgue, the graveyard, because of that. So that one of the drivers of violence in our community is the men are missing. Men are not involved in the development. And again, the first thousand years of a child's life is critically important to get the educational well-being outcomes for that child to really thrive and to go to grade 1, to go to grade 12, to go to university, to really make his mark on life. But if that circumstances, and I agree, ek is baie bly, he's baie jong maans hierso vandag. And parenting, the lack of positive parenting, the lack of parental care, the lack of supporting our children. Ek sien ook baie oumas. A lot of I've worked at Petisa. So there's a lot of children in care and protection. Yeah. So parenting is one of the most critical things that can change the trajectory of a young person for him to thrive, for her to thrive. So parenting is one of the drivers, role models, positive role models. Yeah, I think there's a lot of other things. But when a child has one person that believe in him, believe in her, I can tell you now, almost 20 years ago, I walked into a program and Nico Bucas was one of the facilitators in the Hearts of Men program. And I walked into the program, and that program, I was exposed to positive male role models, positive men. Michael Fingers was there, Sean Phillips was there. That entirely, I have 4 friends. We had 4. We said we want to steal $1 million. We don't want to murder people, rape people. We just want a million because we want to change our circumstances. None of them went to the program with me. One died, two went to prison. Both of them, they are chronically addicted to alcohol and drugs. I'm still going because I went to the program. There were men that were there to support me, to love me, to give me that sense of belonging and that identity.
Yeah, maybe I can just actually just add this, if it's okay. I know that in this room there are mommies and there are daddies. I just want to appeal to us. You see, how we resolve issues in front of our children is so critical. You know, when we have a situation where daddy and mommy are cursing each other, where daddy and mommy are being violent in front of their children, the lesson they are passing to the kids is that it's okay to be violent. Because there's something we call about, because my brother spoke about parenting, you know, there's what we call a non-verbal communication that we're passing across to our children. Even though we are not telling them, oh yeah, because many times we ask them, why do you act the way you act? Why are you so angry? But the question we're not asking ourselves is, why am I so angry? What kind of a message am I teaching my children, even though I'm not telling them not to be angry? But the way I process issue, you know, because if we change, our children are going to change. I spoke about Michael earlier. The boy that stabbed Michael, thank God that Michael did not die. That boy has a father. The moment he stabbed Michael, he ran back home. And guess who was protecting that boy? The father. The father was protecting his own son who had just committed a heinous crime of stabbing another boy who almost died. So, how we process issues at home in front of our children is so, so important.
So just moving on to the next question, and I think as each one provides feedback on the various questions, one can see that they are completely interlinked, and they touch on the various other questions that we're asking the panel today. So you might have answered it already, but maybe specifically focusing on Shahida and Brendan, the next question.
The thing. So here's the question. Maybe it's a systemic question on the issue of mental health services and treatment, psychosocial support services for young men. Did the young men that died in the last 3 years, did they have access to mental health and psychosocial support services in this community? Equitable. Remember, if a young man here has a psychosocial support or has depression, anxiety, or addiction disorder, he don't have the resources, the money to go to phone a psychologist to book an appointment. And so I think it's important to really reflect on creating, and I'm currently working on a project. I'm working with young men between the age of 18 to 25, and what we do on the program is we want to create intentional spaces, safe spaces for young men and for boys to come intentionally. And we are unapologetic about it. Because people are asking me, why are you so passionate about the work with young men and with young boys and with you always working on a project and you will always articulate it. Again, international research suggests if you work with men and boys in grassroots community-based programs and interventions, you will significantly reduce all the social pathologies and all the drivers that drive and fuel crime and violence in communities. So that's why. And another thing is, Steve Biddulph in his book, Manhood, he says your place of wounding is also your place of genius. So I, as a young boy, grew up without a father. I mean, I wouldn't want to do any other work than to be involved in this work because I want to create the change so that fathers and men, future generations, young men don't have to grow up without a lack of a positive male role model. So we are creating ripples, and the work that we are doing is also generational, because I am a TRE provider. The thing with also with our communities, we don't really understand the importance of self-care, of caring for our emotions, for our emotional well-being. As a TRE provider, I work with young men in circles, and through TRE, we call it's trauma, tension, and release exercises. So it's a 7 exercises that we do, and through that exercises, you lay on the floor and you release deep-seated trauma and tension from the body. So the research also tells us that trauma is stored up in the body. The body keeps the score. And so we work with young men in a way that we peel the layers of trauma so that once that layers is peeled, Dr. Bedmaster, they can truly discover their true identity, that I am a human being, I am wonderfully made, I am light, and I have value, and I can contribute meaningfully towards society.
Might be useful that you repeat the question at this point.
Okay, so the question says that how does trauma, substance abuse, the absence of role models, and unhealthy ideas about masculinity contribute to violence among young people?
So maybe it might be useful for me then at this point just to point out to everybody who has spoken that the issue of violence is complex and it's multi-layered, right? So yes, we have to work sometimes pastorally. So in terms of faith contributions, it's very important, right? Then we have to, you see this, the young man here next to me. You know, it's so important that we have men who lead the struggle for young men. And I'm sure you will agree with me the importance of work at this level. I even think that we need to give him another round of applause, right? I also think that we need to work at the level of the way masculinities are constructed. So what somebody was saying about the creation of healthy masculinities, right? And we need to, what you said also, we need to create spaces. The way I sell my masculinity programs to men is you will come here and attend a men's group without risk to your masculinity. Because you want to, always for a man, what you want to guarantee. I'm married to a man, right? And even when I speak to my husband, I must speak to, and I can raise issues, but I must speak with him in such a way that I do not assault his manhood. You will all agree with me, right? And I grew up on the Cape Flats, right? In a matriarchal society where women have often been abandoned and lost the ability of how to speak with men, right? So what I'm trying to say, because I don't want the audience to misunderstand the point that I'm trying to make. I'm saying that we need to tackle, this is a wicked problem, and we need to tackle this problem from the perspective of the hope-giving, of providing people with a vision, etc. All of those things are relevant, okay? But what you need to understand that if Dr. Ishmael said root, okay? Now we need to speak about root. So we in a country by design where 20 million people every day face starvation, food insecurity, etc. Most people can't afford to come and see me, a clinical psychologist. It's out of reach, all right? So what I'm trying to say to you, what is her name? She published a book. Last year I went to the book launch where she interviewed young black men, Sotho, Tswana, Xhosa-speaking men, living in informal settlements. A lot of men in our country, because we're saying healthy masculinity, hello, this man is not earning enough to be able to save up for ilobola so that he can marry. So what are we talking about, healthy masculinities, when the man is not able, and she's got the stats. You brought up the issue of stats, right? She brought the stats, and she showed how many of our young men do not earn enough to pay intlawulo, the damages, so that they can access their children who's been fathered outside of wedlock. In an African tradition, fatherhood is not biological. You have to earn fatherhood, right? There are rituals, there are rules of engagement in our indigenous communities of how they construct fatherhood. But that construction of marriage and that construction of fatherhood requires structures. And those structures were destroyed intentionally. And then, in terms of our unemployment rate and how our economics today is organized, is to continue what the British started long before Hendrik Verwoerd was called the architect of apartheid. Hendrik Verwoerd kom 12:30 op die parade aan. Okay? Because for centuries before the Nats and people like Verwoerd came into power, there was a design, that colonial design was expressed across the colonized world. So all that I'm saying is, do whatever we need to, and we all do our little bits, and we all have to do our little bits. But remember, there is a bigger problem that we're going to have to solve. We're going to have to ask ourselves, how do we shift the structures of society so you do not have to have what you have in South Africa, amazing wealth, live alongside grinding poverty. It's not just that the high inequality rate that you mentioned, Dr. McMaster, it's actually the sinfulness, let's speak biblical, the sinfulness of some people and how the economy is structured, that the rich get richer and the poor remains grinding alive. It is by design, it is not an accident. I may make some people feel uncomfortable, but that is the point. The point is not that we pat ourselves on the back. The point is that we leave here and we ask ourselves, so how can we create that society so that we, on the one hand, we're saying men must be men, but on the other hand, you are not providing the structures so that a man can do what is fundamental universally to manhood, and that is to generate income. My mother always said, men are not having babies. They don't have periods. They don't get back. Hulle moet werk, all right? And so how do we create a society that you actually then allow men to be men on that kind of basic term? Yeah.
religion plays a very big role in how society, metamorphose and change and transform. And for me personally, one of the key verse of the Bible that helped me as a 15-year-old boy when the breadwinner of my house died. It was hard to finish high school. Was very difficult. To go to college was difficult because a few days after my father died, I was already out, join, the people out on the street and all of that. And then I went to church. Something happened along the line. It was Romans 12. We spoke about the renewing of the mind. And so I think a few years ago, it was in 2013, I organized a program. I invited the mayor of Worcester. My family were in Worcester at the time. I invited to come to the event. And she looked at me, she was like, Philip, you can do all of this program. Yeah, these programs are nice. But if people are not going to change their mind, it's just like you're wasting your time. And she is very right. And it gives me the idea that even many of our government agencies have given up on how society can change and transform. And I'm happy that doctor spoke about the structural damage of the society. And when we talk about this, it looks like there is no hope. That society cannot really change because you have to go way back to maybe 100 years or 200 years of history of South Africa, for example, and the damage that has been caused by government of the past. Does it mean that society cannot change, that people cannot change? The things that I believe personally, that through the right education, parents don't give up. Something happened a few months ago. We have 2 kids that refused to go to school. So I took the initiative, took them back to Temperance Town Primary School. I met with the principal, and she refused. She says, no, these 2 children, I won't take them to school because they are troublesome. So I got the chairman of our organization, who was the retired retired principal. So I got him. We went back to this school, appealed to the principal, and she said, you know what? I will just take these kids. And a week after she took the kids in, she called me. She was like, Philip, you need to come and take these children out of this school. And to cut the long story short, these 2 kids are now roaming the streets. So if the people that are in authority to actually help provide the future for the kids, because how can society change without a proper education? Education is the first point of call for any transformation, then religion. So if we fail in the areas of providing the right education because the school can no longer cope with how our kids behave, then I think that hope is a little bit, damaging and questionable. So we need to go back on how can the school's program, my girl came from school yesterday. The kids were so unruly. They were making noise and all of that. And after the school, the teacher went back into her class and she was crying. And one of the kids had to go to console her because she had given up. So I think that is one of the areas we can also look at, like how can the schools, how can religion help in the transformation of a society when dealing with trauma?
I'm just smiling because send them to us. There are many children that have been put out of school. Annette will testify. They come to Smiling Child, and within 2 months, they are beautiful, fantastic children. We work with them. They're learning. I spend time with their parents. I love their mothers. I love their fathers. I get their mothers onto programs where needed. Smiling Child is honestly the answer to the problems in the community.
Sharon, maybe you can just expand.
And I visit the teachers to see how our kids are doing. And one teacher said to me, and all of you can testify because you've all got jobs. She said, I was trained as a teacher, But now I must be a counselor, a social worker. She said, I not only teach anymore, I must fulfill all facets of one child's life. And she cried and she said, and since you've come into my life, she said, you've made my job easier. I take my responsibility as CEO of Smiling Child very seriously. Because if God puts a child in front of my feet, He's also placed in front of my feet their families. Annette runs the school. I must make sure that our kids are doing well in school. So we don't have answers to the violence. I'm meeting with parents and I can't give them answers, but I can love them. And I can encourage them. And when I started last year, I used to go and bang on the doors of the parents at 9 o'clock to say, why aren't your kids by us? Because they've signed permission for us to educate them. After knocking 3 times, I no longer have to wake the parents up. They have their kids coming to us. I had to teach the parents the responsibility of waking up and getting your kid to school. Annette will tell you, many kids come to us filthy. Now I must teach the parents hygiene. So if there was an easy answer, we wouldn't be sitting here, would we? We wouldn't be sitting here. None of us have got the answers. We've got experience. I don't have the answers, but I can promise you one thing. With every parent with which I'm working, at the end of the year, that parent hugs me to say thank you for the amazing work that the volunteers, it's not me. I've got 14 trained volunteers. Thank you for the work that the volunteers have done in getting their kids into school and for the assistance we're doing to just give hope into families. I ride in the community and I load kids up and the gangsters help me put kids in my car. I didn't know they were gangsters. But the gangsters are telling me that the work we're doing is good. All I want to say, and I hand over this mic, people, there's hope. Don't get caught up in this and that and problems, and don't get caught up in that. If you are focused on hope, I'm telling you, you will see the result of it, because Smiling Child does.
Maybe now the rest of the panel can maybe just indicate what, in addition to Smiling Child, what other prevention strategies or programs have you seen work most effectively in supporting young individuals and reducing violence?
For me, it would be break that cycle. Yeah, it's break that cycle. And what we do through break that cycle, my wife is also there. We work with a lot of young people to actually go to the root, like Doctor said, go to the root of why do I behave the way I behave. So the strategy we are using is very simple, because we know that before sin grows, because I come from the background of Christian religion, so I have to use what I know to help educate the kids. So there's something we call sin, and sin in its simplest form is called missing the mark. So sin is not like committing murder or doing violence or all of that. It's just the simple lies and all of that. But we know that lies grows. So if I tell one lie and I go away with one lie, it emboldens me to tell a bigger lie. So then we move into what is called rebellion. So rebellion is you have an opportunity, a chance to change your mind, but you do it anyway. And for every rebellion, there's always consequences. So, and then we grow into what we call iniquity. Iniquity is the violence, the injustice, the murder, and all of those things that create a vicious cycle in a family. And the kids grow up, they see daddy doing it, and they think it's normal, and they start doing it. So it takes one person in a generation to create a negative cycle, but it also takes one person in a generation to say, look, I can't continue like this. It stops with me. So that is what we try to do through Break the Cycle, to say it stops with me. I will do all I can. And also we're partnering with another organization called Strong School. So we go to school. Shazy is there. Strong School is led by Shazy. Yeah. Strong School. We partner with Strong School also. We go into the school in Mzamo High School. We're in Hope and Light and several other schools to help, contribute with what the teachers are doing to say that schools can be stronger, and through the schools we can break negative cycles.
And we have our social crime prevention officers. We have sector managers. Every sector, we have 3 sectors in our area. Every sector must have a sector manager. However, that is challenging, but those are the projects that we have in place. We have school projects where they deal with the junior station commander, junior branch commander, and the junior Vispol head, where those schools take on that project, where young people are appointed as youth in a position as a junior station commander. They then advocate and speak to our young people from their perspective on crime. We have youth desks as well, where I remember when the community I came from, we had a youth desk operating in a specific area, and it was doing very well because it was a gang-infested area, and they were doing prevention on gangsterism. And then the project fell apart because gangsters started targeting these young people. So that is another thing. Youth desk is in place. We also have our spiritual crime prevention that we have in place. Our pastor is here somewhere. Pastor Pick. Yeah, so they look at, we have a weekly meeting. We identify a specific block in the area